Hey YouTube, welcome to my shop. I'm Mike Head and this is Round 2 Woodworks, and I certainly appreciate you stopping by. Now if you saw my last video, you saw that I was mating some Babinga aprons to some hard maple tapered legs for a table. So this time I think I'm going to work on the drawer. Okay. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to cut some stock that goes back like this, and then there'll be a little lip, a little edge on it for the drawer to run. I'll have one on both sides, and I will glue it and pocket screw it to this, and I'll have one pocket screw up on the edge going this way on each one to hold down the top. So that's the plan without a plan. So I guess we should see if this thing is gonna come to fruition. All right, let's get on. Okay, what I was going to do was I was going to affix a piece of wood like this from front to back, from front apron to back, and then groove in a little thing for the shelf, or the drawer to roll on, or to slide on. So I didn't like that. So what I've done instead is I cut a piece of pine, of course, and then I just used the table saw, cut 1/4 of an inch up and then 3/8 of an inch down, zing zang, and cut that little dado there. So then I'll put this like this, and this is what the drawer will slide on. I think I like that better, so let's take it from there. These are the runners for the drawers. So I decided to, pocket screw them in there and not just glue them. Yeah, work. Okay, pocket screwing these runners in. Good. One more and the drawer runners are done. Nothing like the taste of a cup of good Joe in the morning. Tastes like welcoming a new day. And speaking of a new day, I've got the runners in the little side table. Seem to be working all right. So next step, making a box about this size, 5-sided box. Now to make that box, I've got a couple options. First option, what I wanted to do was use my Porter Cable Omni Jig. But my jig is, I only have the big dovetail jig, and everybody loves dovetails, but this jig for a 3-inch piece of wood just overshadows it. I mean, the pins are too big and the tails are way too big. So I decided against the Omni Jig, even though I wanted dovetails. So next time I've got to buy there's a smaller jig that Porter Cable makes for smaller dovetails, so that's on my wish list, I'll tell you. So anyway, the other option I had was a router bit. It's called a drawer locking router bit, and it kind of puts the two sides together like a rabbit and a dado that kind of hooks them in. And I was going to go with that, simple, easy, but hey, I thought that it just the box joint or the finger joint would look better. So what I've decided to do is use the Rockler Box or Finger Joint Jig. So I'm anxious to see how this will work, because I do like box joints. I think they look good. So I've decided to do that, do the box joints, and we'll get on it right now. But before we do, I wanted to show you something on this table. All right, on these runners, I made a mistake. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but the back panel is 3/8 inch more narrower than the front, the other three. And when I resawed the Babinga, it was a 3/8. The last piece I had to cut 3/8 of an inch short. So I said, well, it's against the the back wall, so nobody will ever know it. But people will know it. And where my mind's eye failed me is, let me give you a close-up. Okay, these runners have to be level. So if the runners are level, which they are right now, everything's peachy keen. But when you're over here and it's 3/8 of an inch lower, I don't know if you can see that would put the drawer on an angle, and it'll leave quite a gap right in here. So unacceptable. That is a screw up. So the only way I could do it, really, the easiest way, was just to slide this down. So this is hanging down, not quite 3/8 of an inch. I split the difference. There's 1/16 of an inch difference. So I think that'll be fine. If not, I can plane it or sand it this way. But I think that'll work. And these right here, when I knew I had to drop this down, I didn't think the pocket screws had enough area to go in. So I was going to put this. I glued this board on the runner. So I was going to pocket hole this way. And then I did a practice piece, and the pocket holes was fine. I really didn't need this piece. but I glued it on already, so it's there. So down the road, somebody will look in there and say, "Why did that idiot put that there?" And I say, "Well, it's got more glue surface, so now this drawer can hold thousands of pounds." Let's get cutting box joints.
Front and rear. The box.
Well, normally I have my table saw out by the door and my dust collector outside, but I have to revamp things because it's raining in California. It's mid-July, and that's genuine rain you see. It hasn't rained in California all winter, but in mid-July, it's got to rain. Maybe there is something about this global warming thing. So anyway, I've got the problem with a small shop is anything you do, you've got to move one or two things to do it. Sometimes 3 and 4 things, but at least it's doable. So I'm going to cut these boards, these sides of the boxes, to final width, and then I will take over on my router table. Okay, what we got here is we've got the jig set up. I've got it square to the miters. Now I've got the 1/4 inch box joint jig on it. Comes in 1/4, 1/8, 3/8, 1/2 inch. You can use either one. I'm using the 1/4 inch. So I've got to adjust this up to the height of that board, and I've already adjusted between the router and the jig. There's got to be exactly a quarter. So this is 1/4 inch. The router bit is 1/4 inch, and the space between the router bit and the jig is 1/4 inch. Okay, so now I've got to raise this. Normally I would go down like this and raise it, but the jig covers a hole, of course, so I'll just do it by hand. Now they say do it even and maybe just a little more for sanding. So I'm going to call that good. So now what we'll do, put this on here like this, put like that, zing, zing, zing. Let's cut. Okay, I've got the jig ready. I've got all the pieces A, B, C, D made out with the top and bottom, top and bottom. The top goes toward the index fence. So let's get going. I mean, it's raining today and it's still 82 in my shop. I want to get this done and go take a cool shower. A little tight, not too tight, or not real tight, but just a little tight. So I'm going to have to, this is a practice piece, so I'm going to have to loosen that up a little bit. Moving right along, you can see that the drawer is finished with the finger joints or box joints. Now I've used plywood, Baltic birch plywood, and it's got nine layers plus the 2 outside veneers, 11 layers. So I'm not sure with a router bit, you know, it seems that plywood, unless you go real slow, you're going to maybe chip a few places. So if you use the plywood, real sharp and real slow. So this is it. Let me give you a closer look, and then this isn't glued right now. I've still got to do the grooves for the bottom. So I just give you a close up, and we'll go from there. Okay. As I say, this isn't glued up yet, so this will be squeezed in closer, so that gap won't be there. So you can see it's pretty tight all the way around. There is a small rip out right there, you can see, but other than that, I think sanding is going to make this look pretty good, and all the joints are close to that. There's one in the back. Let me see if I can show you that. Down at the bottom, you can see that's a pretty big tear out. But the drawer is going to go about right there at the bottom, maybe a little lower than that. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, before I get to the grooves, maybe I'd like to talk a little about this Rockler finger joint. Maybe clear up some things and, you know, keep you from hassling what I hassled. You know, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that a good tool to me is one that's easy to use, easy to adjust, stays adjusted, and is accurate. That covers a good tool in my book. Now, this I think covers most of that, except I believe the accuracy of this unit is a whole lot more left up to the user. Let me give you a few things that I learned that kind of helps with the accuracy, but first got to know exactly how this thing works. So let me show you that first. Okay. Now if you lay your pieces out, your 4 drawer sides out, with the insides up, label them A, B, C, D, tops on the outside, bottoms on the inside. The tops are important. You want to keep the tops together at all times. That's what makes it work. So let me show you a piece of wood on this thing. Okay. Here's part A, part B, and both tops. It's important to keep those pieces, those T's together, to keep the fingers together. If not, you're going to get screwed up and ruin some time and some wood and every other thing. So, but there's some other tricks to keeping it accurate. Now there's 3 measurements on this unit. There's the width of the rail, I've got 1/4. The width of the router bit, I've got 1/4. It's a upcut spiral. And then the distance between the router and the rail, that's got to be 1/4. They've all got to be the same. Okay. So now caveat on this, I don't know how accurate this is, but the drill is 0.247. 0.25 is 1/4 of an inch. I use, to measure the distance between the rail and the router, I use a drill. I put a drill down there. Now this is 1/4 of an inch, this is a 1/4 inch drill, and it's also 247. Now the rail itself, that's 2.244, sometimes 0.243. So I don't know. The drill is the cut. That's what the width of the drill is. The cut is what the router bit is. So everything's got to be spaced on that. And sometimes it took me a little while. I had to go now, as I say, this isn't 1/4. I had to go the next drill up, and it was pretty good. Yeah. So yeah, the router bit away from the rail is tighter. Closer to the rail is looser. Okay, so you'll probably have to run it through a couple of times to get that right. Now also the other is the depth of this. Now the way I don't know how many thousandths it takes to screw up a box joint. I don't think it's too many thousandths. So what I have done, I measured the piece with one of these digital meters, and then I measured that right exact. So if you have one of these, I would try to use it. Eyeballing, it didn't work for me. I mean, real close. So you want to make sure that this is as close as you can get, and that distance between the router and the fence is as close as you get. And you may have to adjust them after you practice. And as I say, I'd go around the whole board to make sure everything matches up all the way around, so when you finish, your joints meet. All right. Another thing about this. Now, this way, very tight. This way, it will rock. Okay, so if you have a high board on there and you're pushing through, it's got a tendency to rock. And boy, if it rocks, that'll throw it even on one of the joints. If it's angled, it'll make all those joints not come together. So be sure to, when you're pushing, what I did is I used a clamp or I don't know if you can see it, but you know, a hand clamp and spring clamp, and I just pushed down on this so it would be at level, because when you hit that router, it kind of wants to, you know, rock. Another thing, don't let it rock this way either, and it can do that by getting, if you see there's a lot of cuttings there. I tried to use my fence, it didn't work so good, so next time I'm going to put something up like this so it'll take all those out. Because if you get some of these under, it could rock, and as I say, it doesn't take too many thousands to get this thing looking into a bad joint. So this way and this way you don't want to, so keep it clean. And also put some wax on it so it doesn't stick, and occasionally lift this up and make sure there's nothing there, because when it starts sticking, it starts getting to be a pain. And the last thing I say for exactness is, this is a sacrificial fence. There's nothing behind this. You've got to put a little notch in it for whatever size you have rail in it, and then your router bit keeps the split out down. Now, if you adjust your fence, or excuse me, if you run your router through and it's not right and you adjust it, I would suggest replacing this too before you make your final cuts, because this will, you know, it'll really stop the tear out, and if you adjust it, it opens up a little bit, so one side or the other may get a little tear out. That's not good. So, other than that, you know, I keep it square, and I try to make sure it's square, and you know, when I did all those things, the box joints came out pretty good. Before I did all those things, they sucked. And another thing, one other thing, I've got a port of cable under here at this router, and I always use 1/2-inch shakes, so this is 1/4-inch shakes, so I had to use a collar in there, and I didn't get it tight enough down. Now I'm glad I didn't do this on the practice, because it went 1/8 difference. So when there's 1/8 difference, instead of stopping here, it goes in here, it throws the whole drawer a dimension off. So this has got to be accurate. Take a little time, get it accurate. I think it'll work out for you. It's almost 90 degrees in here, and it's 45% humidity today. This is miserable. I'm calling it a day. Let's see you in a little while. Well, it's called getting the groove on. At least the bottom panel's groove. Okay, this groove was kind of tight for the bottom board, so I gotta add a little to this groove. What I'm going to do, this is in there pretty tight. I'm just taking an automotive tool, and I'm putting about 20 thousandths on. Let's see, what is this? 25 thousandths, or 635 millimeters. So I just added a little space, and now I'm going to do it again. Okay. Looks like while you were sleeping, I got the drawer finished up. What I did is, you can see I glued 3 of the drawer panels together as square as possible. When it dried, I slid the bottom into it and glued the last panel on. And then I put the drawer into the table, and I put the front on it. Now, I ripped a 1/8 inch piece of maple, and I put it on the drawer front just to give it some contrast. And when I did that, I had to cut 1/8 of an inch off of each side to compensate. So that's about what the drawer looks like. And then I also put a little stringer on top so the drawer doesn't hang down, you know, when you open it. So there is a 1-inch stringer right here in the middle. So I guess that takes care of it for this vid. I wanted to do the drawer for this little table, and seems like it's all completed. So the final step is the tabletop. Now that might be a little difficult because I'm trying to do this with everything that I've had, you know, that's in the shop. So the tabletop, I'm going to have to think about. I really don't want ingrain on the top, so I've got to encase it. So I'm going to have to think about a semi-plan before I get to that tabletop. So until next time, YouTube, I appreciate you stopping by, and I invite you back to see how the top of this table turned out and how the table on the whole will turn out. So until next time, take care of yourself, and we'll see you then.